with me. Righteous Father, we invite your presence here this morning as we begin these deliberations in this Finance Committee. I pray, Father, that we will approach our duties with reverence and with a desire to seek to do all the good that we can for as many as we can in approving these budget items. Bless our deliberations today and throughout the days ahead. Bless our lives. Help us to always be mindful of you and to keep you in our thoughts. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Please be seated.
You don't have a clock. Well, I guess you know that by now.
I know she'd be here.
Morning.
Morning, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good.
Oy. More pictures from Hazard.
FS is here as well.
Yeah, you can.
Okay. Morning again, everyone. We are going to begin our deliberations this morning by examining the appropriations to the Minister for Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing. Those appropriations can be found on pages 29 through 32 of your document. We are going to begin our examinations this morning by looking at the HES 1, Policy Advice and Ministerial Services, Health, Environment, Culture, and Housing for $7,966,314 in 2020 and $9,156,886 in 2021. Are there any questions? Member for Northside.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Minister. The budget for 2020 is about 40% over what was budgeted for 2019 and 2021 in this subhead alone. And for 2021, it's roughly another 20-25% increase. And overall, for this ministry, the budget is some 56% greater than it was in 2019. Can I get a list of the new policies and services that kind of expenditure is going to introduce to the people?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank the member for that question. I will introduce you to the Acting Chief Officer to give you some further information on this.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Nellie Pucci, Acting Chief Officer of the Ministry of Health, Environment, Culture and Housing. Through you, Mr. Chairman, with respect to the inquiry on HES 1 in 2020, our increases are due to the following: $125,000 for an additional Deputy Chief Officer in the Ministry, $30,000 for travel and other expenses, $285,000 for the long-term residential mental health consultancy fees, $1 million for the operational costs on the long-term residential mental health facility, and $800,000 in consultancy for the ISWIMS project. Through you, Mr. Chairman, for the ISWIMS project, the Integrated Solid Waste Management System.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the extra $200,000 for consultation for the mental health facility, what does that entail? Isn't that currently under contract for construction?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, there are additional professional fees that the $285,000 encompasses, which are required for a project of that magnitude.
So we have designed the facility, put it out for contract, but the consultant say is not complete. What exactly is the consultancy continued? Is it the architect that's being retained to manage the project, or are we still talking about what kind of services we're going to deliver by this facility that is being built?
Mr. Chair, if I could also add some words to help. This project was tendered twice.
But these consultant fees are related to the second tendering of the project?
A portion, and for legal and financial advice.
So we're still getting legal and financial advice on a project that's under construction. All of that wasn't sorted out prior to deciding what we were going to build and how we were going to build it and where we were going to build it and who was going to build it.
Mr. Chair, thanks for your patience. We're consulting with the policy team. I must add that this project was originally tendered as one package. When we received the bid, which only one bid came in, the government wasn't satisfied with the magnitude of increase over what we had budgeted. So we thought it best to, once speaking to the project management team, to retender and break the packages up in 5 different packages. So hence the reason for additional consultancy fees. And the only explanation at this time, I think anyone from the major projects office is here, is that the consultancy fees throughout the length of this project will be ongoing. If the member requires more information, I can undertake to get that. There's supposed to be someone coming from the major projects office.
To you, Mr. My question would be is that I was of the understanding when we legislated the new procurement law and we introduced the major project offices that they were going to be doing the project management. You would not be required to routine consultants to do the project management. So you're saying that in addition to the project management and the procurement team being involved in this project, we are going to spend $200,000 in additional consultants to do the project management?
Not anything different. It's the same consultancy.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, let me bail them out of this river. And there was also mentioned that in this year there is another consultancy to do with the mental health facility in terms of operational aspects of it. When is the mental facility coming online? Is that in 2020?
2021.
So the obvious question is then, did I misunderstand you in saying that there were consultant fees in this for the operational aspect of it in 2020?
As I understand it, as I've been advised, the consultancy fees is from the operational budget. The professional fees.
So there are no new services, no new policies being introduced by the ministry for this 40% increase in the vote that is to do with policy advice for ministerial services, other than what you enumerated so far, consultancy on the mental health, and that's beyond policy now, I would hope, if you're putting rock bricks in the ground. Huh? Okay, Mr. Chairman, let's move on. Obviously,
Mr. Chairman,
to another topic, because it's going to be plenty out there this morning.
Mr. Miller.
Yes, sir, go right ahead.
Look, yeah, just one. Wouldn't that,
Member for East End.
for proper accounting, wouldn't that be an EI, equity investment? You can't put that in your
Policies.
advice and all that. You can't pay consultants out of that, can you? I'm asking. I'm no accountant. Mr. Chairman, you the accountant, you know? Big one too? Oh, you, yeah.
Through you,
Mr. Chair, as I understand it, these are professional fees that go into the cost of the overall project.
okay, through you, Mr. Chairman. There are 6 pieces of legislation listed in this plan and estimates. Since none of this 40% increase is assigned to the development of those pieces of legislation, which have been in the P&E now for at least 5 years, what is the timeline for the introduction of legislation on the pharmacy law, the health practice and health practice regulations, the human tissue transplant law, the public health law, the mental health law, and the mental health regulations, the mental health commission law?
Mr. Chair, we've just received, the CMO just started, and he's actively working on all of these policies. It is a lot, and he's trying his best to bring them forward as quickly as possible.
So the ministry has no timeline during the next 2 years to introduce any of this legislation. It is based entirely on the new CMO ability to get things done. He's not been given any performance targets and dates.
Mr. Chair, thank you for your patience. Thank the member for the question. As I've stated, the CMO is working diligently on these one at a time, and I can report to this honorable House that the public health law, which was the first one that he started working on, is with legal drafting now as we speak. The next that he's going to work on is the HPC. That's what he's working on right now. After that, he'll work on the tobacco law, which encompass vaping, etc. After that, he then will work on the health clinical standards, and then he will work on the health practice law, the full revision, but also be mindful that minor updates to the health practice law are already in now with legal.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I think I'm correct in saying that the current pharmacy law under which we're operating is a 1979 piece of legislation, which I wrote. I also wrote a new pharmacy law and passed it into law in 1992, which was later repealed and has not been replaced. And you're telling me that you're putting priority on the tobacco law, right, over the pharmacy law?
Mr. Chair, the pharmacy law had went to caucus once. There were things that caucus were uncomfortable with, and it was sent back to the ministry.
Such as?
Well, one of the things that one of the major things that caucus had a problem with was the ownership element of the law. Ownership of pharmacies.
So when can we expect that to be corrected and the legislation being brought to the Legislative Assembly?
There's only so much that we can do. It's a lot of work going on, and we're trying to manage. There's some changes going on in the ministry, and we're trying to manage all. Caucus view is that we don't believe that you need to be a pharmacist to own a pharmacy.
But you got to be a doctor to own a doctor's clinic, and you got to be a lawyer to open a law office, right? Huh? Anyway, I'm just interested in getting the standards raised, because when I go to the clinic in Northside to pick up medication, and the label is in Spanish and the paper is in Spanish, right, I really have some difficulty trying to understand what the side effects are for it. And it is unfortunate that professional legislation is being held up and standards are being held up because of an argument over ownership. You should be able to delete that clause and bring the rest of the bill. But anyway, that was
It's not
just
an
my-
argument, Mr. Chair. It's a discussion, it's under review, and it'll be made available.
for 5 years.
Well,
Anyway, that's the same reason it was repealed before.
I've only been here 2 years.
Okay, well, let's move on. Let's move on. Mr. Chairman, we need some order in this place, sir. You need that panel where people can't talk unless you turn on their mic.
Mr. Chairman, when that member goes back so far about 92 to try to make his case, I am here to say my case. I was then the Minister of Health at that time. And so if the member carries on, then I will reply.
Members, I'd like if there's any any discussion stuff to be done through the chair.
That statement don't apply to me, sir.
I
I'm not doing
understand. I'm just asking for everyone's cooperation.
that. Right, okay.
Okay?
Chairman,
Stop
I'm
the
replying to
I
the
understand.
member from Northside because
have
the
no
member
right to
has
reply to
raised.
me.
You don't frighten me. When the member has raised about 92,
I'm so
I was then the
frightened. I'm so
minister. If that member keeps going back to it, I will reply. So it's your job to tell him stop his 92 tirade.
Chairman, can I be allowed to continue to question the ministry?
Please continue with your questioning, sir.
Okay. The minister, in his response about the delays in the legislation, says that the CMO has only been on the job a couple of months. And I believe the member for Savannah can confirm this. But in 2007, as I recall, he set up a committee in the ministry to review the public health law. And nothing has happened, and nothing since that. Is the minister saying that the CMO is going to review the public health law in its entirety and bring a new piece of legislation that's needed?
Mr. Chair, that is what has been done. It's gone through a full consultative process already, and now with legal drafting.
The public health law. Can you explain the role of the CMO in the ministry's office and what his duties and responsibilities are?
Mr. Chair, beg your indulgence and patience while we consult. So Chair, I'll allow the acting chief officer to explain.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the main purpose of the Chief Medical Officer's role is to act as Chief Policy Advisor to government on healthcare matters, to ensure that the appropriate mechanisms are in place to monitor the health of the population and the quality of healthcare services and professionals. The CMO is a lead advisor who reports to the Chief Officer and the Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And what is the list of qualifications and competencies that were required for that job?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the main knowledge, experience, and skills required of the CMO post holder is that the candidate must have a medical degree from an accredited institution and have completed an advanced degree in public health or equivalent, be a board-certified medical practitioner registered in the UK, Canada, USA, Australia, New Zealand, Jamaica, and South Africa, be registered with the Cayman Islands Medical and Dental Council, and possess a minimum of 10 years professional experience with a minimum of 5 years experience in a senior management position in healthcare management and public health policy. Additionally, the person should have a highly developed interpersonal consultation, communication, and negotiation skills, extensive knowledge of clinical workforce planning, clinical governance and performance management processes, sound knowledge of health disaster, financial and fiscal management, sound knowledge of the laws governing the roles and responsibilities of the CMO.
And the current holder has all of those competencies and qualifications?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I was not a part of the recruitment process for the current post holder, so I'm unable to speak as to exactly which of those he holds, but he was a successful candidate, so I would assume that he does.
Will the ministry agree that public health is a specialty in itself that normally requires a PhD in public health administration or at least a master's degree in public health administration?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the post holder, that of CMO, is required to have a master's in public health or equivalent. The current post holder has the equivalent, and public health is managed through an output at the HSA.
What is the equivalent that the current post holder has?
Mr. Chair, on a matter of procedure and elucidation, is it deemed right by the chair and the committee to be asking questions pertaining to a post holder while a post holder is being the one who's advising on it. Just doesn't seem to be right, but it's for your consideration and that of the committee.
And I'm wondering too as well, it wouldn't be more appropriate if there were questions to be asked that they be deferred to the Deputy Governor when he and talks when they arrive, and they're looked at separately.
Mr. Chairman, I would suspect that the Deputy Governor answer to that is going to be that the ministries set their own competencies and qualification requirements for the position that they have. But we can move on. Will the minister consider there's $500,000 in this budget for postgraduate qualifications for Caymanian medical doctors? Will the minister consider, because what we're talking about here now, Mr. Chairman, is public safety and et cetera, et cetera. Will the minister consider recruiting one of the young Caymanian doctors who already has their MBBS and who might have an interest in public policy and sending them off on one of those scholarships to either the UK or Canada to get the requisite public health specialized qualifications to fill that position?
Mr. Chair, thank the member for the question or the suggestion. This suggestion would be considered subject to financing.
Mr. Chairman, the financing is there. It's been there for the last 2 years, and I don't think they've used half of it to send Caymanians to get postgraduate qualifications. It's just left there unspent. Question, Mr. Chairman, what is the ministry's policy in encouraging and providing the mechanism by which young Caymanians who qualified as doctors to get their board certification in specialists that can work at the hospital?
Mr. Chair, can the honorable member please repeat the question?
Mr. Chairman, to my knowledge, there are 10, if not more, young Caymanians who qualified to their MBBS level as a doctor, who at some of them, as long as I am aware, 7, 8 years, been trying to get funding to go overseas to get trained in the specialty of their choice, and they have been unable to get it. With the cooperation of the government in the 2018-2019 budget, and particularly the Minister of Education, I managed to get $500,000 put in the 2018 budget and $500,000 put in the 2019 budget. How many Caymanians have been sent off in the last 2 years to get board certification in specialists that we are now bringing in on locums, providing accommodation from, and all sorts of things?
Mr. Chair, what I can provide the honorable member, at this time is that 5 Caymanians were sent off in the last 2 years. I don't have any more information than what was provided to me by the CEO.
What percentage of the $1 million did that 5 persons cost?
Mr. Chair, the technical thing about this vote is that it's actually under the Ministry of Education, as I understand it, for postgraduate studies.
But, Mr. Chairman, as I recall, the Ministry of Education relies on the ministry either through the HSA or maybe through the CMO now to identify the needs of specialization that the country needs and offer that opportunity for Caymanians to go and get the qualifications. And you say 5 went, and
Yes, Mr. Chair, and the member is right. The ministry would give policy direction, but we don't have the breakdown as to how much was spent out of the million over 18 and 19.
okay, Mr. Chairman, can the minister say what specialties have been identified to be trained in the next 2 years, and whether that training is to certificate, is it some little diploma or some little couple of weeks certificate, or is it what the money was intended to do, which is board certification in the specialty? It's a complete different thing.
I would love to give the member the answer, Mr. Chair, but if he could be so patient to wait till the next Ministry of Education to provide that information.
With respect, Mr. Chairman, the Minister of Education can't possibly tell the Ministry of Health what their specialist needs are. Do you need OB-GYN? Do you need orthopedics? Do you need surgery? That has to be a decision that is done by the Ministry of Health, hopefully on the advice of the HSA.
And we undertake to get that information to the member, hopefully before the session's finished.
Mr. Chairman, from a policy point of view, what does the ministry regard as the biggest medical threat in the Cayman Islands during this 2020 and 2021 budget?
Mr. Chair, it's quite distracted. Could the member please repeat?
What advice has the minister been given when he supports these increase in funds as to what is the biggest, or what are some of the medical threats to the Cayman Islands people that will be addressed through policy in this 2 budgets?
Mr. Chair, I'll allow the CMO to respond with some information. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, through you.
Member, may I ask you to please state your name and your position for the record?
My name is John Lee. I'm the Chief Medical Officer for the government. Mr. Chair, through you. So I believe the biggest threats that the Cayman Islands face are ones that are ever present, those of communicable diseases that we've been taking active measures to address. Dengue, you're aware that the ministry puts a lot of effort into the control of mosquitoes and provision of information in order to try to help people to protect themselves from the disease. There is currently an active program which we are about to release for the enhanced immunization of the people who are first responders around measles, because we're very concerned that only one flight away there are people who have measles who could come to this country, and Cayman Islands has been measles free for quite some years now. The other big issues for us are, of course, non-communicable diseases, and they are ever present. And aligned with that are the costs of healthcare. They pose a big threat to the ability for the Cayman Islands to manage health, because rising costs mean that we are faced with bigger challenges in order to manage all of our healthcare problems.
With this is disturbing. This is disappointing. This is terrible. And I feel for my country. So you're saying that the threats that, as CMO, that you're concerned about are communicable diseases and the diseases that we have. You didn't mention lifestyle diseases, but I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say that that's included. Dengue and immunization of first responders for measles. What happened to our immunization program that has been in place from the 60s, where we were running 98, 99% immunization for all the immunizable and communicable diseases? Has that program been abandoned? So much so now that we're worrying about first responders getting infected with communicable diseases? And what about protocols to prevent the first responders?
Mr. Chair, through you. The issue of non-communicable diseases includes all of the diseases which are not caused by some infectious cause. So they would include hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and so on. These are the most significant issues, and probably the biggest cause of all of those is tobacco and smoking. As far as the measles is concerned, yes, there is a very good immunization program on the island whereby very high percentages, in the high 90s, of the school children are immunized by the time they reach the age of 5. We're currently slipping somewhat on our target for the 18-month second measles vaccination dose. However, we remain concerned with the people by first responders, I mean people such as the people at the ports, people at the airports who do not have a documented measles vaccination history. We wish to reach out to them and all of the primary care teams that may handle tourists who are coming off the boats and the planes to make sure that all of the citizens of the Cayman Islands are adequately covered for measles. That's our concern because of the highly contagious nature of the disease.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, is the CMO saying that the records that existed, because we're talking about immunization in Cayman going back to the 60s, and you're saying that the records doesn't exist that these people were properly immunized at the time? Because it would certainly be, if somehow the government has lost their records, those are all reportable to the World Health Organization and the Pan American Health Organization, and they should be accessible from those sources.
Mr. Chair, through you, I understand that we do maintain those records and have those records going back to the 60s. However, the World Health Organization and PAHO are recommending that we, if countries are able, to run an enhanced immunization program to make sure that anybody does not have documentary evidence of a primary course of measles vaccination has the measles vaccination in order to make sure that everybody is covered. We do have people coming to the country who will not have a documented vaccination history, and it's likely those rather than the citizens of Cayman who will need it.
Mr. Chair, I don't think the CMO added that since 1986, the vaccination MMR has two immunization shots have been given. Anyone before 1986 would only have been given one.
Member for East End.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can I request a 10-minute recess break to discuss some matters with the opposition?
Yes, sir. We'll go ahead and take that 10-minute recess.